morning cold and the smell of dust and crushed grass. A hillside in Galilee, somewhere above a lake, maybe 30 years into the 1st century. People have been climbing since before light. Fishermen with rope-burned hands, widows, farmers who owe more than their fields can pay. The kind of crowd history never writes down. They have come to hear a carpenter's son from Nazareth, and the first full sentence he gives them, the opening line of what will become the most famous speech in human history, is, on its face, absurd. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Hold that morning in your mind. We will come back to it before the end. Because 7 more sentences are about to roll down that slope, each stranger than the last. And here is the part that rarely gets said about them. Some of the earliest mystics of the church did not read these sentences as comfort or as commandments. They read them as a staircase. 8 steps, climbing somewhere specific. By the end of this journey, you'll see where it leads. First, feel how upside down these sentences are. Every society that has ever existed publishes its list of the blessed. Rome's list was carved into triumphal stone. The strong, the victorious, the wealthy, the famous. Our list glows in your pocket. The followed, the funded, the frictionless. Now hear the hillside list. Poor, grieving, meek, hungry. Then merciful, pure in heart, peacemaking, and finally, persecuted. It reads like the world's list run through a mirror. The Greek word that opens every line deserves a moment of its own. Makarios. Older translations say blessed. Some modern scholars prefer happy, and a few argue for something closer to flourishing. It was a word the Greeks could use for the untouchable contentment of the gods. Whichever shade you choose, notice what the sentence does. It does not promise these people will one day be blessed if they behave. It says they are. Present tense. That morning. As is. Which is either beautiful or outrageous. Tell a grieving mother she is blessed. Tell a man whose field failed. On the surface, these are the words of someone who has never buried anyone. Unless the sentences are not describing the surface at all. Before we go deeper, here is something the crowd on that hillside cannot know. We can. The empire whose soldiers patrol their roads, the largest power on earth that morning, will crumble into museum pieces. But the speech survives. 8 sentences, spoken to a crowd that mostly could not read, with no scribe of their own and no army behind them, will outlive Rome, cross every ocean, and be recited in more languages than the empire ever conquered. Words do not usually behave this way. Something inside these particular sentences refuse to die. The question of this episode is, what? An answer surfaces 3 centuries later, in the writing of a bishop named Gregory of Nyssa, one of the most daring minds of early Christianity. Working through the Beatitudes line by line, he noticed something hiding in their order. They are not a list, he argued. They are a ladder. Read them as stages and watch the staircase appear. It begins with poverty of spirit, which the mystics did not read as low self-worth. They read it as emptiness, the inner hands opening, the admission that you do not already contain what you are looking for. Every tradition this channel has visited begins on this exact step, because a full cup can receive nothing. Emptiness makes room for mourning, not misery for its own sake, but the honest ache for what is missing, finally allowed to speak. Then meekness, the strange, unbothered strength of a person who has stopped defending a false self. Then hunger, the same old appetite, aimed at last toward real food. And notice the hinge in the middle of the ladder. The first 4 steps are about what you lack. The last 4, mercy, purity of heart, peacemaking, endurance, are about what begins to pour out of you. Somewhere on that 4th step, the direction of the water reverses. You stop drawing from the world, and something starts flowing through you into it. For Gregory, the summit sits at step 6. The pure in heart, the text says, shall see God. And for a mystic, that is not a figure of speech. That is the destination, the direct seeing that every episode of this channel keeps circling. Now, the honest ground. Scholars do not agree that a staircase is what the original speaker intended. Many read the Beatitudes as prophetic reversal, a promise that the world's losers will be vindicated when everything is finally set right. Others read them as one portrait painted 8 ways, a single kind of soul viewed from 8 angles. The staircase is one reading among several, and the text itself declines to arbitrate. But here is what rarely gets said out loud. Every one of those readings agrees on the scandal. However you interpret them, the sentences run the world's list backward. Whatever else the Beatitudes are, they are a demolition of the scoreboard, Rome's, and the one glowing in your pocket tonight. Because our scoreboard is not kinder than Rome's. It is only faster. It blesses the visible, the measurable, the winning, 1,000 times a day, in your palm. And it quietly steps past the very states the Hillside called blessed. Emptiness reads as failure. Grief gets skipped. Meekness doesn't trend. The staircase, if it is one, begins on the exact step our world tells you never to stand on. That may be why so few people ever notice there are stairs. So go back to the hillside, as promised. The light has climbed. The morning cold is gone, and the crushed grass has gone warm underfoot. The text gives us only the crowd, the faces we must supply. So picture one. A woman near the back, hands empty, who has buried 2 children. Hearing a voice roll down the slope, "Blessed are those who mourn." Not "will be fixed," not "should be stronger by now." Blessed, present tense, as if her grief were not disqualifying her from the kingdom, but somehow facing her toward it. Whatever moved through her in that moment, the sentences walked home with her. Out of Galilee, through the fall of an empire, across 20 centuries of stone and ink and fiber optic light, still insisting, against every scoreboard ever built, that the list is upside down, or that ours is. The crowd thins in the late gold. Down the slope they go, carrying nothing but sentences. The poor, the grieving, the meek, the hungry. Walking home under a wide rose and amber sky, looking for all the world exactly like what the morning called them. Blessed. If sentences this old can still flip the scoreboard, there is far more waiting on this path. Subscribe to Mystic Pathways and climb it with us. Keep seeking.